This is From the Mezzanine, a film podcast. We're Chuck and Matt, two guys from the Midwest who love all things film. We're about to bring you more than 90 minutes of pure film and TV goodness. We have no ads, we don't shill products that we don't even use, and we don't trade good reviews for special access. We cannot be bought, and we're not selling our opinions. Chuck?
Oh yeah, our opinions are our own. Sometimes we might get in trouble for them, which is probably why we're so obscure, you know. But this was an adventurous week. North Dakota was buried in snow. I almost had to resort to, immoral acts like internet piracy to see the title, film for the week. But a lot of stuff there's a lot of stuff to talk about. There's a lot of I guess the only word for it is like preening and sniping, between the different schools of acting. There's a film festival gearing up that has some interesting trailers to talk about. And there was just, since I was stuck inside because of, for so long, I was able to just watch a bunch of stuff, including, Severance, and you even, offered up a manga. I haven't read a manga in a long time.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting read. We'll talk about Goodbye Eri by Tatsuki Fujimoto. And I have three different mentionables, just to kind of throw out there. But before we dive into it all, we kind of have to, circle back to last week and talk about, the Oscars yet again, unfortunately, and that slap heard around the world. We just can't help ourselves, There's just too much to think about from the fallout of all of that. First and foremost, with Will Smith being banned, for 10 years for, having to do the right thing as he saw it in that moment. But who did you want to ban from the Oscars? If you had the power, who would you say stay home for a while? We're not even going to nominate you anymore.
Yeah. So the way that I kind of thought about this was like, who is like the most insufferable at these events? Like not only the Oscars, but also like the Golden Globes and like the BAFTAs and stuff. Yeah. And who is just the most insufferable person just by their very presence? And I came up with Meryl Streep.
Are you fucking kidding me? That was my pick too.
Really?
Like, look at this lady. She's won it 4 fucking times. She thanked, Harvey Weinstein for like 3 of them. So, she's obnoxious. I know she's the queen. No one's better than her. Yada yada yada. But I'm just sick of her. It's like for me, it's because
she's not even the queen anymore. She's been full blown like deified at this point. It's like. So I was looking at kind of her numbers, and in the last 20 years, she's been nominated for 9 of the last 20 years, 9 films, and in 9 years. And the thing is, there was a point at which, she was really great, and she still is a great actress, but the stuff she's getting nominated for just does not cut it. And she's only getting nominated because of who she is. And just like if I was looking at the list and it's like, tell me the last time you heard somebody rave about any of these films.
Okay.
The Post, Florence Foster Jenkins, Into the Woods, August Osage County, Julie and Julia. Those are the caliber of films she's getting nominated for, and she's just like insufferable in how she's sort of become this like permanent fixture at these award shows.
Yeah, like her, like, and Tom Hanks to me is the male version of this, but he's a little less obnoxious just as a presence. But because he's not a god, he's an everyman. She is a god though, and I've seen Julie and Julia recently, and her part of that movie is the only reason to watch it, to her credit. But when I hear some of these movies thrown up there. Like, I haven't seen half of them. For some reason, I watched August Osage County and I wanted to die. But I just think about who didn't get nominated because we just had to give Meryl her, this one's actually a good movie. We got to give it to her. Like who is left off of the list because of her? And I think that's why she needs to just be, put into the emeritus category. We don't nominate her anymore. We don't need to hear her political pandering as she introduces, the nominees for, best cinematography. We just don't need that crap.
Yeah, I agree. I that was going to be kind of my second part of this whole equation, is when she does get up on stage, whether it's because she won or it's because she's presenting something, she's just absolutely insufferable with all of her like political pandering and like her sort of like self-righteousness. And so that's kind of the second part of it. But yeah, I just I could go without seeing her forever now. I mean, she got her Cecil B. DeMille Awards. So, I mean, she's done it all, man.
Yeah, it's like, what else can they give her? They just need to... Enough is enough, people. We've had enough. Mm-hmm. Bear with me here. I'm just trying to get a media window set up here so I can get some web pages on display. Moving on to the next thing, because speaking of just like actors taking themselves too seriously, I guess, is Meryl Streep considered a method actor, or is she beyond that?
I think she's beyond that. At this point, I think she just shows up and then sort of puts her game face on, and that's about it.
Yeah, which I guess is more fair. But there's other people, because like I didn't put this on the list, but like the most notorious one of today is probably Jared Leto in terms of method acting. But there's been a spate of different actors. Mads Mikkelsen was one, and just kind of saying method acting sucks and method actors are lame. I guess do they have deeper criticism than that, or do they just think it just doesn't? They just think it's a waste of time. It's just pretentious. Is that kind of what it boils down to?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Mads Mikkelsen's probably the funniest in his criticism, but I'll read a couple of them here. So he calls it pretentious bullshit, and he said that, what if you're in a shit film? What do you think you've achieved at that point? And then
fair.
Yeah, actor Will Poulter had a more restrained take, saying, and what he said was, when it comes to an actor's process, whatever that is, so long as it doesn't infringe on other people and you're being considerate, method acting shouldn't be used as an excuse for inappropriate behavior. That's basically what he said. Yeah. And then in addition to that, I won't read them off, but Jake Gyllenhaal, Samuel L. Jackson, and Robert Pattinson have all said stuff about it in the last year or so. And then Martin Freeman is probably the most direct, and he came out against method acting, specifically calling out Jim Carrey's performance on Man on the Moon.
Really? Okay. I guess I can get that. Jim Carrey's beyond us all, though. Like, did you watch that Dear Andy documentary that he did? Where, like, the whole thing is just a fucking put on, and it's all just him, like, rubbing his balls in our face, just because he tricks us into taking him seriously. So, I don't know. I think it's a little unfair to throw Jim Carrey in there, especially since he's big enough to retire after being in a shit movie. That, like, I can't imagine he did the method when he was figuring out Dr. Robotnik, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, the interesting thing about this, and the whole reason why I put this on our outline this week, is because my question for us was going to be, why is this happening now? Like, why is this? Why are all these actors suddenly coming out against this? And because out of all these people we've talked about, 4 or 5 of these people have been in the last like month and a half. And so it's like, why is this all happening in one big giant spate, basically? And so why do you think?
Is there a group chat? Like, do they have like an IRC channel a Discord where they are like, hey man, this is what we're going to be rolling out, which is probably more true of the journalists asking the questions than of the actors themselves.
Oh yeah, sure.
And I think that maybe has more to do with it.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking, it kind of I think it kind of lines up with our changing culture, sort of, in that, you know, whether you want to call it like our society becoming more enlightened, or if you want to, you know, say it's cancel culture run rampant, you know, I think it has more to do with that, in that like the people who didn't used to have a voice, or have more of a voice now, with like in the age of social media, where, you know, in today's day and age, if you're like a key grip on the set of an HBO series and some actor flips out on you,
Yeah.
you can go home and tweet about it or write a post about it on some social media site, and more than likely you're going to get a entertainment website wanting to comment from you, or at the very least some shitty gossip rag online gossip blog that wants to hear your take. So yeah, it's almost like,
that's very true.
I think that, I think that has to do with it, is that it's a lot of like, because in like the early 2000s, you know, you think about when Christian Bale,
that's what I was going to bring up. Yeah.
Yeah, his like trashing the lights thing on the Terminator Salvation set.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah. Nobody gave a shit. Like,
no.
people were laughing at that. Nobody cared about that guy he was yelling at. And that's because, you know, he, like, nobody knew who that guy was. He didn't have a platform to complain about Christian Bale. And so everybody just laughed at it and made memes out of it, basically. So
yeah. And I guess, you know, because bad behavior on sets has kind of like in the Me Too era, but I guess, you know, has made it more of the conversation, has given the nobodies on these sets, you know, more power. Because I didn't put it in the news section, but Frank Langella just got fucking canned from a show because he did something inappropriate with either a co-star or someone working on it. And of course, Netflix has no chill for, you know, stories and issues like that, you know, after the House of Cards and Kevin Spacey, you know, bullshit. So it's understandable. But yeah, when you have Jared Leto giving people used condoms and just being like, it's part of my process, you know, it does cross the line. And even if you are, like we talked about, what's his face, the guy on the Goldbergs who was, you got cyborged into the role because he was making people uncomfortable by being himself. I think it's just becoming more and more of a workplace and less of an artistic, you know, like lab, like some people, you know, or like it's a family, you know, it's like it's a dorm room, like this is where we can riff and, you know, and make the process more fun to make it less business-like. But let's face it, there's millions upon millions of dollars riding on these productions, and if someone gets their feelings hurt or is made uncomfortable, that can derail the whole fucking process, let alone someone crossing a line and doing something like morally or criminally wrong. So it does you can't just say, hey, it's part of my process anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I had said when we talked about the Goldberg story a couple weeks ago, I had said that, you know, I think this is kind of the beginning of the end for eccentric actors, where, you know, people aren't going to tolerate like eccentricities anymore. It's all just going to be like, it's going to be a job. Like you said, it's going to be, you come into work, you do your thing, and you clock out at 5, and, you know, it's going to become a lot more regimented, I think.
Oh yeah. And in some respects, a little more lame. There'll be less and less kooky people looking to be, you know, actors, or, you know, on like reality TV shows, or like even like YouTubing isn't what it used to be, especially when you get big, you know, like this, look at H3H3, you know, the Ethan Klein guy, like he can't be,
he just got canceled, didn't he?
Again. Yeah. It's like, he comes back groveling and he'll limp back into, you know, I guess he'll get the limelight again eventually, but yeah, so you just can't be who you could be in the past anymore. But looking ahead to, you know, like, I guess what we can expect from international film in the next year or so, the Festival de Cannes is back once again. It's a fabled little, you know, event. It's my dream to go to this someday if it continues to happen. It'd be really fucking cool. there's a lot of interesting stuff on the lineup this year. Most prominently, we got fucking Cronenberg back at it. The director of Old Boy, whose name I'm blanking on right now, Park Chan-wook.
Park Chan-wook, yeah.
He's got a new movie. But I guess just briefly, I'm just going to throw the trailer up because I haven't actually seen this. So this is my live reaction to Crimes of the Future. But beyond, what do we know about this fucking movie? It's Vigo. It's a lot of different people in this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Looks bizarre.
It looks very cool. I think it's very Geiger-esque, and from what I understand, it has something to do with a guy who is not like a plastic surgeon. Well, I guess kind of a plastic surgeon who does like body modifications on people, like right there. But yeah, it looks very, very interesting, and definitely looking forward to this one. I feel like because Cronenberg hasn't had a movie in I think about 8 years now, I want to say.
Not since Map to the Stars. Map to the Stars. Yeah, whatever that was called. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's been about 8 years. So I kind of feel like in some ways this is him coming back and saying to his son, like, okay, I'll take it from here. I'm gonna do this now again because I'm gonna stop doing my weird movies about like Cosmopolis and my weird movies about Freud and Carl Jung, and I'm gonna go back to what made me great. This weird
because he had a weird because History of Violence and Eastern Promises were interesting from him because they were so grounded and in some respects kind of pedestrian compared to what he normally does. But yeah, I think he saw how people reacted to Possessor, and he was like, okay, hold on. I'm not done yet. Yeah, there's this old dog. I still got tricks, guys. Mm-hmm. Even though I got a lot of vibes of Existence, watching that. Just like, So I'm happy because I love me some body horror. He needs to not just be like a verb or adjective used by the writers of Rick and Morty. Cronenberg used to mean something, and he should, I'm proud of him that he's bringing it back. Mm-hmm. But what other titles showed up on this list that kind of caught your eye?
Yeah, so I'm a big, I like James Gray. There's a new film from him there. George Miller's new film, his first since Fury Road, is going to be there. Do you know anything about that one?
I do not. I saw his name and I freaked out a little bit. So what do we know about this?
So it's called 3,000 Years of Longing, and it's about it stars Idris Elba and Tilda Swinton, and it's about a genie that grants 3 wishes to. I don't know who's playing the genie, if it's Tilda Swinton or Idris Elba, but one of them's playing the genie, and they are granting the other one 3 wishes. So.
What the fuck, George Miller?
Yeah, so that'll be interesting.
This is the man that brought us Babe the Pig.
Yeah, and Happy Feet.
And Happy Feet.
Right. So that'll be good. And the other ones, I was looking through the list, and I was kind of trying to pick out a couple that were, a little bit more obscure, a little bit more interesting sounding, other than like fucking Top Gun Maverick or whatever. But the ones that caught my eye were The Triangle of Sadness from Ruben Ostlund, who is did you ever see the movie The Square?
I did. That movie was that was different. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, that was crazy. So that's his new movie, and the plot centers on a celebrity couple who are invited on a cruise for the ultra rich. The yacht crashes and sinks near a deserted island, leaving the group of billionaires stranded with the ship's captain, who is a rabid Marxist.
That's gonna be fun. Oh my god.
Yeah, he's pretty good at. I mean, The Square was definitely very, very political, very, very much a satire, and so this, looks very much in the same vein as that, and then the other one that kind of caught my eye was Holy Spider.
I was just about to ask you about that one because that title, it really caught my eye on its own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's from a director named Ali Abbasi, and he's actually he hasn't done much, but he's going to be directing some episodes of the upcoming Last of Us TV series.
Interesting. Okay.
And but this movie is about a guy named Saeed who embarks on a religious quest to cleanse the holy Iranian city of Mashhad of immoral street prostitutes. After murdering several women, he grows desperate about the lack of public interest in his divine mission. So that sounds pretty insane.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Yeah, okay, buddy. Yeah, all right. I want to watch that. It sounds fucking rad, but it's capital P problematic.
For sure.
To say the least. Very interesting though. Mm-hmm. And Claire Denis got a new movie that I see in the list as well. And then because I forget how I had forgotten how Cannes did things. There's the competition, there's the uncertain regard section, which is basically, hey, you made it, you're here, and then it's like
the blockbuster section.
Yeah, then the blockbuster section. Yeah, I'll never forget when I saw Jack Black dancing with fucking pandas at the Cannes Film Festival for Kung Fu Panda, and I was like, wait, what? I thought that artsy fartsy shit was here. Why does this get to premiere there? Yeah, and of course Baz Luhrmann's Elvis movie is out of competition, but I'm sure you'll get a standing ovation unless it's a giant turd, which it very well could be.
Oh yeah, definitely. It could very well be Australia or something.
All right, I just have to pull up one trailer here for the next movie we're talking about, because you were able to sneak away. You missed. You didn't have to deal with any, road closures and city shutdowns, and you got to see Fantastic Beasts Part 3. Mm-hmm. And did it live up to the expectations of the Potterdom, the Wizarding World fan base? Did even you get something out of this movie?
Not really. No, it was so bland. Like, this is first off, so Warner Brothers has straight up come out and said the success of this movie is what we're banking on to make the last two movies in this 5-part series. And so it's already bombing. So first and foremost, none of this matters.
Yes,
we're not going to get a fourth and fifth movie. The movie's bombing. There were about 10 other people in the theater when I went and saw it on the premiere night showing, the very first showing. And it was so bland. This is like a blockbuster that is engineered to be safe to screen in China, basically.
Even though they had to edit it to screen it in China.
Yeah, they had to edit 6 seconds where Dumbledore says, "I loved him." Like, that's literally.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, but that could mean anything. Like, like, this is guy love between two guys. Like, it's just bro. I love you, bro. they could have softened it somewhat.
They could have. It's very clear in the movie. It's very clear that. I don't know if you're familiar with the previous movies, but Dumbledore and Grindelwald, played by Mads Mikkelsen, had a relationship when they were younger.
Yeah.
And there's a scene in the movie where they're talking about it, basically. And I'm really not sure how that. I would actually kind of want to see what the cut of the Chinese cut is, because I want to see how that scene plays, because in the American version of the cut, it's very clear that they're talking about like a relationship that they had when they were younger. And so I want to see how it plays otherwise.
And this kind of the pandering to China stuff pisses me off. Just on its face, because I'm sorry, but it's like, this is the political topic and talking point. Yeah. We literally have this big culture war row over whether or not it is appropriate to introduce certain concepts to children of a certain age, to the point that we're legislating it in, like in Florida, very famously. And and Disney, took a big stand on that, and people can make their own decisions if they want to support that company or not. But I guess what I'm trying, what is occurring to me here, because you've said you want to see the kind of like the Fight Club cut. It's like you want to see the joke going around, though, on certain internet circles is, oh, I am pirating the Chinese version so that I can get the non-woke version of entertainment again. And people, I don't know, no one's serious about it, but that's kind of what it's coming down to. Like, there was a time where a guy had a business editing movies for Mormon audiences, and there's a fun documentary about that guy. But that's basically what the industry itself is doing with its own content, at this point. But it's like they wouldn't do that for the American audiences. Like they're deliberately putting as much of that kind of coding and messaging in there as possible. But we're just gonna cut it all out just for China? Like, no, I don't know. I just find I find it lacks principle, I guess.
Yeah, it very much does. And I think what's even more offensive than the actual cutting of it is how they came out when people got pissed about it. WB came out and said, "Don't worry, the spirit of the film remains alive."
The spirit of the film remains alive. We have a little guest. Yeah. They're doing some more snow removal, and Angie must move her car so that they can complete the job. And that means we have a guest. You want to say hi? This is November World.
Well, she seems very baffled.
Yeah, she doesn't really get this. The lights. Okay, no, we need you to be a little quiet. Okay, I know you can't hear Matt, but you can hear me, okay? There we go.
But I guess just to talk, strictly more about the movie itself. So it's very bland, and the plot is very, very hard to follow, because the plot of the film is basically Grindelwald captures this magical beast that will allow him to see the future. Ooh. For some reason. If he basically slits its throat and then drains it of blood, and then he looks into the blood on the ground and can see the future, essentially.
Cool.
And the problem with that, though, is the plot. All the characters in the movie, except for Dumbledore, can't know the plot of the movie, and that means that the audience can't know the plot, because if they know the plot, if they know the plan, then Grindelwald knows the plan, basically. And so the audience is going through this almost the entire movie not knowing what the plot is. So it just feels like scene after scene after scene of not knowing why people are doing the things they're doing and what their ultimate goal is, until everything's revealed in the end. And
and this doesn't sound clever. They're trying to be clever, but it's not.
Yeah, it's just you're in the dark and you don't know what's happening, and it just plays like a very disjointed collection of scenes. And the only thing, there's literally one thing I liked about this movie, and that one thing is there's a bit of I wouldn't call it genius, but there's a bit of cleverness in the movie where they have to go to, Newt Scamander and all the characters have to go to the German Ministry of Magic. And while they're there in Berlin, they have to go to a wizard black site. And it's so wild, because it's
so you're talking like a CIA black site.
Yeah, like a CIA black site, but for wizards. And it's nuts, because they go there, and what it is it's a giant pit in the ground, in this cave, this pit in the ground, surrounded by imprisoned prisoners in cells. And then next to every prisoner, there is a lantern with a lightning bug in it. That's the only source of light in the room. And when the lightning bug dies and goes out, a giant scorpion tail comes out of the pit and stabs the prisoner and rips them down into the abyss of the pit. And that was like the one thing in the movie that I was like, okay, this is sort of cool. This is very interesting, and it's surprisingly like violent and surprisingly absurd for this very bland movie.
Yeah, this kids show. Yeah, basically, because even though they're now entertaining adults at this point, but
for sure. Because it kind of reminds me of. Did you see the first Fantastic Beasts movie?
I haven't seen any of them, but I do find the idea of it of exploring the wizarding world beyond the United Kingdom, like that was fresh territory, which is why they went to America. And going to deeper Europe makes sense, and setting it in the past and actually acknowledging the events of human history is like they have intriguing ideas there, but it does just seem like it's unnecessary and purposeless in a sense, just from the sounds of it, because like they wanted to make 5 fucking movies out of this. And what were they going to do? Were they going to be showing wizards letting the Holocaust happen?
Well, that's the weird thing, is the last movie, in the second movie in the series, at the end of the movie, Grindelwald like lays out his big grand plan, and part of his big plan is to to stop World War II from happening, I believe. I see,
because he's seeing the future and sees it coming.
Yeah, he sees World War II coming, and he sees like the Holocaust coming, and that's part of his like big plan. So, and they don't do anything interesting with that in this movie. They don't even acknowledge that, because it's still this series is still in, I think, the late 1920s. So there's like World War I is technically like it's maybe just got over with, but big yikes either way. It's pretty bad, and it really doesn't matter anymore. Like they're not going to make the next ones. And that's the other thing too about this one, it feels like a film that they didn't have any faith in, because the spectacle of the movie is very much restrained compared to the first two. Like it feels lower budget. It feels like there wasn't as much money put in the movie. The action scenes are lamer, and it just feels like a series that they've given up on, basically.
The wet fart instead of the triumphant, I guess, middle act of this pentology, which I don't think anyone has truly intentionally structured any franchise that way before. But yeah, so a missed opportunity. But I guess when you're kind of just making it up as you go along, and you're not working with the direct genius of the creative mind behind it, because like how involved was she who shall not be named with this series?
She did write the screenplay.
She did. Okay.
Yeah, she did. Okay. Yeah, I made sure to, because I was curious about that too, so I stuck around for the credits, and it said screenplay by J.K. Rowling.
Wow.
So,
well, good for her.
It's interesting because they very much are trying to distance themselves from her, and so it's weird that they didn't do any rewrites or anything.
Yeah, I get it. Because that's probably, I don't hate to say it, but it's probably what's going on here. Is like this is doomed to fail with her involvement, because the target audience of the wizarding, the Harry Potter adults, for the most part, are alienated by her presence at this point. Unless they, just are able to look past it. But yeah, it's we live in interesting times. It's just too bad that the movies can't be just as interesting all of the time.
Yeah, this very much, I guess the last thing I'll say on it is I just thought of this, but this movie very much reminds me of the last what is the series of books that C.S. Lewis did? Oh,
the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the Narnia books. Yeah, the Dawn Treader movie that they've released.
Yeah, this reminds me of the last movie in that series that was released, because at that point in that series also nobody gave a shit by the time that movie came out. So
it's funny because it just to keep spitting on that yarn briefly. The BBC did this back in the 80s, did this really low budget, but honestly probably superior version of the Narnia books.
Okay.
And, of course, the lion's a puppet, but the lady who plays the White Witch fucking kicks ass, even though Tilda Swinton's awesome too. When she in that first movie that Walden Media did was pretty decent.
Yeah,
but when it came down to doing, because like we had VHS tapes of those growing up, and The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was like a proper adaptation. It got like a full runtime all to its own, as did Prince Caspian. But then you had the Voyage of the Dawn Treader was just a lame story, and it didn't really work as even as like a TV miniseries, which is basically what it was. And all of the Narnia books honestly just get weirder and lamer as they go along, but the Silver Chair is like the weirdest of them all. And I was very sad that they didn't make that one, because it's just about these other kids that not like the main cast is fully out of it, and they're going on a journey into like the hollow earth of Narnia where like lizard people are, to like try and save Prince Caspian's son. And don't even get me started on the rest of it, but there's a reason why they stopped doing Narnia books. There's like it just gets really fucking strange. And then of course the last book is the apocalypse. It's Revelations, but for talking lions. But yeah, Dumbledore is a bore, unfortunately. even if you get Jude Law in there, it just doesn't hold up.
Yeah.
So moving on though to like what is in streaming, I finally was able to watch, because I got conned myself into getting Hulu again, but it actually made sense because there was lots of good stuff on there. Whoever's curating them is upping their game from when I unsubscribed. But I finally got to see Censor, which is this nasty little horror movie, about the like British classification office, like this lady who works in it during the video nasties era in the 80s. And so it's her job to watch these awful straight to VHS gore fests that were so popular over there at the time, and make recommendations for cuts, basically. Have you seen this movie? Are you familiar with it?
I'm familiar with it, but I haven't seen it. No.
It's really light. It's a really quick watch, but it stars the lady who gets turned into a tree from Raised by Wolves, and her background is that she and her sister were like out in the woods one day, and then something happened and her sister vanished, and she's watching a video nasty, and it just rings very close to her experiences in the woods with her sister, and she starts trying to figure out, well, who made this? Is my sister playing herself in this movie? And so it gets kind of mysterious, and it's very unclear, whether this character is unhinged or if she's rational. And the deeper you go into the movie, the less certain you are about, she's an unreliable, I guess she's not narrating the movie, but her perspective is utterly unreliable. And you almost start wondering if, well, maybe she fucking killed her sister and just can't believe that she's still alive. Like, she wants her to still be alive because she knows that she isn't. But she doesn't want anyone to know that she murdered her own fucking sister. But I'm not spoiling anything, because this movie maintains an impressive amount of ambiguity all the way to the final frame. And that's to its credit. Like, it doesn't give you answers. It just gives you really wonderful neon-soaked bloodfests and some interesting deaths. And and they do lots of fun stuff with the aspect ratio, because she almost like enters like a 4:3 ratio video nasty in her own mind, at a certain point in the movie. And it's worth watching. It gets a recommendation from me.
How's I think I saw in the trailer there that Michael Smiley is in the movie.
He's awesome.
Is he? Okay,
Yeah,
awesome.
he plays this creepo filmmaker who's like, yeah, because like the whole debate on whether or not media influences real world behavior, kind of comes up in this, because that's what was happening at the time. And one of his movies was allowed to pass with some cuts, and he gets involved with it because he may or may not have to be responsible for what somebody did because they rented one of his movies.
Okay.
But he's in the movie briefly, like maybe 2 or 3 scenes, but he stands out. And whenever I see him in a trailer, I'm like, okay, cool. One of the guys is in it.
Yeah. Yeah, this is one that I'll have to, because I do have Hulu, so I'll have to seek it out, because they do have a lot of hidden gems on Hulu that they I feel like they try and push down sometimes. Yeah. Like because I know that another one too that you'll have to watch that you have it now is Benedetta's on Hulu, I think.
I saw that, yeah, and it's on my list, because as soon as I got it back, I was like, holy shit, this is here. Like, there's too much, things I've been putting off or things I've been having trouble finding. But no, it was well worth returning to it. And I also picked up Apple TV Plus for a month, and I'm probably going to keep it until I'm done watching a few other shows. But I burned through Severance. And Angie walked in on me watching it halfway through, and she even just rode through with it, having only seen, the back end of the season. But like, you've been singing its praises, and all I can do is echo the absolute like love that I have for this show. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. It's like it's like an episode of Black Mirror was given a full season order, and without Charlie Brooker's involvement, so it has a little bit of a lighter touch to it, and it's not just apocalyptically, dark. Yeah. There's a tinge of, it is at times pretty funny. Yeah, definitely.
And it's got a tinge of comedy to it, and I think that's kind of what Ben Stiller brings with his like directing and yeah, it's just such a weird world. Like I love it. I love everything about like the world and how it's kind of like ours, but there's some very weird things like I think one of my favorite episodes is the one where they go to like the Cure Museum.
Yeah, the perpetuity wing, and there's all those wax statues of the CEOs. Yeah, and that's good. They slowly kind of make you, see like how this world, or at least the corporate world, is religious. They have this religious fervence for the goals of the company. Patricia Arquette, her performance was really understated, but absolutely menacing. And the whole cast is wonderful. Like, and if there's anything that Apple TV seems to have nailed, it's that they can get the best of the best to work with them. The fact that you have John Turturro and Christopher Walken playing the characters they're playing, and they're given so much time in these episodes just to be like have a meet cute, be kind of like awkward around each other, and to have that whole relationship develop is so special. Because it's very un-TV like, and I guess that's why, like, what I loved about it is that it didn't do too many dumb TV things that you would come to expect to see, from a series order in this day and age. But Ben Stiller didn't direct every episode, but he didn't have to. I forget the name of the individual who did a lot of the back end ones. Really impressive work. Yeah. It's kind of impronounceable for me, that name. I'll look it up quick.
Yeah, it's like a Norwegian name or something. I remember seeing at the end of some of the episodes, and I was like, I have no idea how to say that, but holy shit, like they did good work. And that finale was unbelievably tense. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Yeah, that was incredible. It's just so satisfying, and that constant like ticking clock element to it is it's like the fastest, most tense 45 minutes of television I can remember watching, in recently, and it's just so like masterfully done, and the ending is perfect, and it gets you excited for the next season.
And there's a lot of room for the show to grow, which is what's great about it. Like the mystery box is open, but we don't dare like reach in ourselves, because of how scary the premise is. But if I did kind of like, this is a show about leaving your work at work and not bringing it home with you. I guess if you could boil it down, like if it's literally is a culturally mandated thing, or like a corporately mandated thing. It's like it does you a favor, but it also does some like existentially horrific things. But there's also like the whole idea of a pregnant woman going through severance so she doesn't have to experience it herself. That's an interesting idea. And it's beyond just the workplace how this technology could be applied. And that's where it's like this could have been just a throwaway Twilight Zone, Black Mirror episode, but it gets to be so much more. And Adam Scott gives probably the best work of his career in this show. I was so impressed with him.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. He's really great. He's a long way from like Parks and Rec
and Party Down.
And Party Down. Yeah. So yeah, he's kind of growing into a really good dramatic actor. He's one of those guys who I think can make the jump from comedy to drama pretty easily, or pretty, maybe not easily, but very, very well.
It's the right director, because I was just watching trailers that the algorithm was throwing at me the other day, and he was in a prior Ben Stiller joint. He was in the Walter Mitty movie. Yeah. So briefly, I never saw the movie, but he's in the trailer at least.
Okay.
So they know each other. They have some rapport, obviously, and like who would have thought Ben Stiller would actually start making serious stuff that was good? He's on quite the roll, and I hope that and that's the thing about this show that I find fascinating is that it's been in development for like 5 years. And as soon as like Ben Stiller read it, he was like, "This is mine," and he didn't let it go. So good for him.
Yeah, and the guy I can't remember his name right now, but the guy who wrote it, this is the first thing he's ever done. He has 0 credits to his name other than this, and whatever this guy goes on to do after this, I'm here for it. Like it will be a day one watch for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Good stuff. Please watch it. Get that Apple TV subscription, just for a month. Take a couple nights and burn through this show.
Yeah.
Moving on to the mentionables. You had linked something that is available for free on Viz.com, through Shonen Jump, the manga, publication out of Japan. And it's the latest from the manga, I can't say the word, mankata behind Chainsaw Man, I think it's called, but It's a Goodbye Eri. How did you come across this?
I think it was like I came across an article, because I've never read Chainsaw Man. I have no familiarity at all with the author, and I was reading an article somewhere, and this was in the headline, was basically, go read this before it's locked behind a paywall, basically.
Shit, yeah.
Because that's the intention. I think eventually this is going to get put behind a paywall. But yeah, if you go on Viz.com right now, today, you can read the whole thing. It's a 200-page one-shot manga. And it was so weird, because and it's very fortuitous that we both read it this week when we're talking about Everything Everywhere All at Once, because I think they share a lot of the same DNA as far as being meta.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of similar DNA here with that movie. And I don't want to get too much into the plot, because this really goes places. And
you need to go in cold and just kind of let it take you by the hand and just run with it, because
it really, like, it's only 200 pages, which isn't a lot for a manga. I think I read it in about 45 minutes, and it's on its face, it's about a kid named Yuta, I think, who his mother asks him to film the last days or the last couple months of her life when she's diagnosed with a terminal illness. And he's like an aspiring filmmaker. And then one day he meets like a fellow film buff, and things kind of go from there. But yeah, that's another reason why this is very, very appropriate for our podcast, because this is on its very face, it's about two film buffs, and they talk a lot about movies and they watch movies a lot. So, and
the act of watching, and also like the what filmmaking can be, and like what, like, it supposedly, it's about revealing truth, but it very often kind of obscures truth as well to manufacture a different one. And I guess ultimately that's kind of what the point of it, becomes, towards the end of it, because things aren't always as they seem, Yeah,
definitely. That's definitely the case with this. And I highly recommend it. I really don't like manga. Like I can count the number of like manga things I've read on one hand, but something about this stood out to me, and I would highly recommend people go read it. I think maybe when we're done here, we should link the manga in the description of this show.
That's a good idea. So people can just go to it.
Yeah.
Because it's like you say, it's a quick read, but by the end you're just reeling in much the same way that everything everywhere all at once kind of just pounds you into the ground.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that. I also, because I was locked up in my house for so long, we ended up watching some things that are definitely old news, but I've never actually seen Lars and the Real Girl, and it happened to be on HBO Max, I believe it was. And I've just never seen this little movie before. But for those who don't know, it's about an awkward guy in Wisconsin who starts going through some kind of a mental breakdown and buys a sex doll on the internet and starts treating her like she's a real person. And all the nice people in his little town start maintaining the delusion with him. And it's just a goofy, sweet little, movie about grief, I guess, ultimately, and self-actualizing. But never seen it, but I'm glad I finally took the time to watch it. So if you want something a little light and relatable to the Midwestern sensibility, check this out. No one dies in it.
Yeah, I remember I saw this in theaters, I think, when it came out, and I remember it being good, but other than that, I don't remember much about it. But the one thing that I do remember when this came out that I just remember being so pissed about was this was around the time where any movie that was released that was a comedy and an indie movie was immediately compared to Juno.
Yeah.
You remember that? Like everybody compared any for about 5 years there, 3 to 5 years, every movie that came out that was an indie comedy was immediately compared to Juno, and how it wasn't as good as Juno, or how the dialogue wasn't as well written, and it was so annoying. And that's what people did to this too,
which is unfair, because it stands on its own 2 feet, and it's also kind of the beginning of Ryan Gosling evolving from whatever his career was before it, because he really just started making really strange creative choices beginning with this movie. So it's from here that he does all the batshit stuff that he would go on to do with like Nicholas Winding Refn and beyond.
Yeah.
But since it is the season for it, and let me just get this out of the way. It is Easter. We're recording this on Easter Saturday. And so I got a couple very obvious Easter movie recommendations because, it's what else are you going to watch? It's either you're Jewish and you watch The Prince of Egypt, or, you're a masochist Catholic and you're in the mood for, some real reflection on the Stations of the Cross. So you watch The Passion of the Christ from Mel Gibson. And I did both over the last couple weeks. I've seen Prince of Egypt like 4 or 5 times because November will just grab the Blu-ray remote and just power it on, and she knows how to make the movie play. So saw Prince of Egypt a lot, and we watched Passion of the Christ yesterday because it was Good Friday. And the only, I guess, comments I have to make, about it are just like seeing it on streaming for the first time, in a higher resolution than a DVD. The cinematography fucking rules in this movie. Mm-hmm. It's Caleb Deschanel, the father of Zoe, and I forget the older sister's name. But there's one particular shot of the Satan representation where they have a maggot come out of one nostril and go into the other one. Never seen it before. Never was cognizant of that when I watched the movie. And just the high strangeness aspect of it, that's obscured by all the blood, gore, and controversy. There's some really bizarre creative choices made in this movie that I think a lot of people don't really pay attention to. But yeah, I understand this isn't for everyone. But there's a lot of Christians who definitely save their viewings of this movie for this time of year.
Did you, just out of curiosity, because I remember I've only seen this movie once, and it was back, when I was in high school or maybe even middle school. I don't remember, but, this was back when I was still going to my Methodist church that my mom went to. And we did the thing where our church rented out a theater. Did you guys do that at yours?
We did not. Okay. We just, we went to see it. I went to the mall theater in Dickinson where I saw pretty much every movie at that point in time. And I remember when I got my ticket for it, I was confused because this factors into something that was controversial about the box office for this movie. But the ticket said Hidalgo. Because he sued a lot of theater chains because they were instead of selling tickets for his movie, they were selling tickets for other movies and then letting people in to see The Passion of the Christ. And that movie still made almost $1 billion globally, for an R-rated film in dead languages, that a lot of people in the industry didn't approve of for this, that, or the other reason. Mm-hmm. But we just went to it in a regular old theater, and I at the end of it, I just bawled like a baby, because I was a 13-year-old, Catholic boy, and it just fucked me up, and it lingers still. But I was just reminded of the power of it as I was watching it, just on that level. But you can't recommend it, and I can't expect anybody else to love this movie just because of my personal lived experience, which will become relevant as we move on to the main subject of the afternoon here. The latest film from Daniels. What are their real names again?
I think it's Daniel Kwan and the Daniel Leonhardt. Okay. I don't know. The other guy, he has a very long name, but it's they're two Daniels. That's why they call themselves Daniels.
Most people, if they are aware of them at all, they have seen Swiss Army Man by accident, or deliberately. Yeah. But in this film, we have a Chinese immigrant family. They run a laundromat, and they're in trouble with the fucking IRS because they don't know what a fucking Schedule C is. And I was just sitting there yelling as a former tax worker, just going they need a tax preparer. They shouldn't be doing their own taxes. But of course, they probably can't afford it. But they're in the midst of that little crisis in the day. Their daughter is stressed out because she's a lesbian and is struggling to integrate her lifestyle into the family. The husband wants to file for divorce on top of it all. And then a different version of the husband shows up from an alpha universe because the multiverse is collapsing, and it's all because of this fucking family across all known universes in time and space. What the fuck?
Yeah, it's very, very... I mean, I guess to kind of start off with general thoughts, I really, really thought this was something... I mean, this is like a once-in-a-generation type of movie.
Yeah.
Where because it's so unique, it's so weird, you don't get movies like this at the budget that it has very often, because film studios just don't have the confidence in these types of movies. And so on that premise alone, I think it's worth seeing. I think anybody and everybody should go out and see it when it's in theaters also, because it's a spectacle. It's definitely a spectacle movie on top of that. But that said, there's a couple things. I think this movie has one very fatal flaw, and then a couple other things that I really didn't care for. And I think there's a lot. We'll talk about this later, but I think there's a lot of what's the word? People are blowing this movie out of proportion as far as its best movie of all time type of thing. So there's a lot of people out there saying that, and I think that's like overblown big time overblown hype. But yeah, what about you?
I understand exactly like what you mean. Like, there's caveats to my enthusiasm for this, because it's undeniably the most unique theater experience you will get this year, and that we will probably get in the 2020s. Like, I can't imagine anybody, unless it's these guys, delivering a feast for the senses quite like this. It kind of reminded me of the Fall in that respect.
Oh yeah.
Just because like that was one of those movies where it was like, holy shit, I need to stop everything. I need to be all about this movie. Albeit you have to accept the things about the movie that are imperfect. Mm-hmm. But the imagination that went into conceiving this is amazing. Because I toyed with a multiverse sort of a concept that anchored around the least inspiring, least successful version of a person, doing, being brought into some kind of weird multiversal heist. Like, it was more like Ocean's 11 than this movie was. And this movie is far better than whatever script I was working on, 10 years ago. Even though the concept is similar. And that's to credit, these guys. But there's just so much lol, we have hot dog fingers now. We're coming mustard and ketchup, whatever sentimentality that this movie has just gets washed away every time we just have to be reminded that all things are possible and these fucking guys can see all the possible things and throw it in our face. I completely missed the raccoon Ratatouille thing as it was introduced, and then all of a sudden it's there in front of me. That kind of shit. Like, they're throwing so many things against the wall that for a few segments there, nothing sticks. And I guess that's the thing that holds this back from being something transcendently great. But it is undeniably watchable and fun and worth everyone's time, especially if it means getting out of the house after being cooped up for 4 fucking days I was. It was a welcome experience to go to see this movie. But the crowd I was with were not vibing. There
really?
No. How
many people were there?
There was maybe 12 of us. And 6 of them were what I can only assume were pot smoking teenagers. And I literally heard them, one of the guys behind me say, "Dude, I'm so fucking bored. I don't know what's happening." And I was just like, what are you guys doing wrong? Like, what's going wrong here, guys? This movie's made for you, you know. But this isn't just Rick and Morty, you know, just being, you know, edgy for the sake of it. Like, these guys were trying to say something, you know, about regret and like, you know, like what life could you have if you could have it? Like, if you had the chance to really know what you were capable of, wouldn't you want to know it? And I don't know, but like, what were the things that really held this movie back for you?
Yeah, so I guess, I mean, kind of what you were saying, where I think there was there are a couple moments in this movie where it almost seems like everything grinds to a halt in order to do the sort of to pull on your heartstrings, or to kind of try and you know, have the emotional scene, but it's in the middle of all this wackiness and all this craziness, and it just didn't really land for me, like a lot of those scenes, and yeah, it got very like repetitive, where the one thing I will say, when I was speaking earlier about there being a fatal flaw to this movie, I think that what that is the length, because this is a very, very good 95-minute premise that's stretched out over 2.5 hours, but it feels like 3 hours. Like, it feels longer than it is. And after a point, it gets too repetitive of, you know, where it seems like it's action scene, and then let's get stuck in a room for a little while, and then action scene, and then let's get stuck in another office, you know, cubicle for a while, and then action scene, and then let's get stuck in an office for a while. You know, it's like
it grinds its gears pretty bad, more than once. It's like that, like having it happen at one like at one particular significant moment is one thing, but like, yeah, like you say, like, I expected us to be getting to a finale just in the pacing of the experience, and then there's like an hour of movie after that.
Yeah,
it just keeps going, and they just keep on throwing the same things in your face, and I just wanted it to end, you know, like, and I don't usually say that about movies that I'm really enjoying, and like, because it's not that I was bored, I just kind of felt like it was harrowing in a way that I would not expect something this zany to be. And if you're making a movie that is this fast paced and has this much shit going on, and to keep track of like all these different realities and threads, you know, all kind of mishmashing together and affecting each other, they make it impossible to track it. You know, just because, like, wait, I've already seen something like this, and now it's happening again, and it's happening again, and they practically hit the reset button at one point too, and made it really unclear if anything that we had seen for a half an hour had even happened. I don't know. It got confusing for me.
Are you talking about the rocks thing?
Not necessarily that. That was bizarre though. That made me laugh.
That was pretty funny, but yeah, that was I mean, it went on for way too long, I think, but the idea behind it was pretty funny.
Absolutely. It just,
but I guess, yeah, I mean, the length, but you were kind of alluding to earlier about how the, you know, well, like the wackiness of the movie, you know, like the hot dog fingers and the Ratatouille like parody and stuff like that. You know, it is all very, very wacky, and at some points it can kind of feel like, you know, oh, so random. But I will give them credit for coming up with the craziest iterations of what these different multiverses can be, because in the year 2022, when it seems like everybody is doing multiverses, and everybody wants to do multiverses, including the MCU, when people come up with these multiversal ideas, it's usually like the most boring iterations of you know, when you literally have, you know, your mind's imagination as the only barrier to any possible universe you can think of. The multiverses we normally get are so boring, and this really bucks that trend where, you know, they are coming up with pretty crazy ideas.
And it's not just for the sake of craziness either. Like this hot dog fingers universe is relevant because there's something from that reality that actually is essential for the main character to be able to contend with the scenario she's stuck in. It's not, oh, no, I have hot dog fingers, but it means that I have more dexterity in my feet. You know, and how is that useful? Well, it just so happens to be very useful. So it is, like, that is to their credit. It's not just wacky zany just for the sake of it. It's they are able to mine something deeper out of it and make it work for, you know, the overall plot of the movie and like what the character has to deal with. Because like that is interesting about the mechanic. It's doing the way that they can experience the other realities that they have as an individual is all done by doing the most improbable thing in that moment. And I liked that. That was pretty fun. That was different. And what it forced the main character to have to do also just kind of, the energy in this movie is insane. Yeah, until it's like, okay, we need to give something for the Asian American community to, get really, gooey eyed about, which, of course, that stuff didn't resonate with me, I guess as much as, some film critics, which you brought up in the outline, and we might as well dive into a little bit more. Because to a lot of them, this is the best movie they've ever seen.
Yeah.
And that is a pretty crazy thing to say.
Yeah.
But I guess
just to kind of, so I put this for us to talk about, and it's a kind of a thing I've noticed over the past 2 weeks or so, ever since the first press screenings of this movie started happening. And I guess to call them out by name, there's 3 critics in particular. All 3 of them are Asian, and I only mention that because it's germane to what we're talking about. But David Chen, Walter Chaw, and Devendra Hardawar. The last 2 are from the Slash Film Cast.
Okay.
And then the first guy, Walter Chaw, I think he sometimes writes for, I want to say, New York Times. He does like freelance reviews for them sometimes, but basically they say, I was reading and listening to their thoughts about this movie, and they say it's like one of the best movies they've ever seen, like full stop, because it reminded them of their childhood. It reminded of their parents, of the things that their immigrant parents went through to make it in America, and they kind of acknowledged that fact while saying that it's one of the best movies they've ever seen. And something about that sentiment doesn't sit right with me, especially when you're a professional film critic or a professional reviewer, because, it's one thing if you or I say that, we can talk about, I like this movie because it reminded me of my childhood. And we can talk about that because we don't get paid for our opinions.
Yeah.
And we don't, get paid to, write or talk on behalf of anybody else. But when you're in a more professional setting, it's really weird to me to acknowledge those things and then still say that you think it's the best movie ever. Like, to sort of acknowledge your, I wouldn't say biases, but to say, I might like this movie more than a lot of people because of my childhood, but at the same time, I'm going to give it 5 out of 5 stars.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. What do you think about that idea?
It kind of, like, it's funny, but I'm reminded of 2 different things we talked about over the past few weeks. One is Harry Knowles and the other is Turning Red. Just because, like, that's, Harry Knowles' raison d'etre was to make, his recommendations for shit are around the things that turned him on the most, basically, and got his juices flowing. And this got their juices flowing because it triggered all of the the memories that they have, about, the people that they love and the experiences that they themselves had. Like I guess that's to the credit of the filmmakers, Daniels, to, because that's probably exactly where they were coming from when they made this, to a certain extent. And I would, and then the same with Turning Red, like itself, they're kind of thematically similar in that respect, about trying to get your parent, like as far as the daughters, are concerned, in Turning Red and this movie are concerned, trying to bridge the gap of culture between the immigrant parents and then what they have, as citizens of a Western country in a younger generation at that. Like, how do you like the incompatibilities are baked in, like, how do you get over that? And this is kind of the era of identity, especially in journalism and in criticism too. So it's icky, and it feels like a little irresponsible, to just make your recommendation wholly based around what your identity informs your experience of things to be, instead of searching more for an objective truth, about the art itself. Like, I don't know, my Catholic identity, is why I have any affinity for the Passion of the Christ, but it's also why I somewhat prefer, and I was telling Angie this, like, I prefer the Last Temptation of Christ more than the Mel Gibson movie, because it twists it, and it brings up a more human and interesting point within it, even though it is absolutely blasphemous in its execution of that. But there is no blasphemy, I guess, to be found here, for this identity group, and it doesn't encourage them to look at the movie in an objective way. And I guess that's where things can fall apart, because can your enthusiasm for something be, easily replicated, in a wider audience that isn't you? It might not be as likely. Like, I could find a lot within the themes of this movie I could get with, and that moved me deeply, but it definitely, was held back somewhat by how much certain things just kept on getting thrown in my face, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I just thought it was an observation I made, because, usually when people bring stuff up like that, it's treated as a reason for why they may have a bias. Basically, it's something to acknowledge and then sort of use as it's brought up in a negative way. It's like, I have this bias, and that's why I either might like or dislike this movie more. But in this situation, they're trying to use it almost as like a positive thing, where they're like, I have this, characteristic, so I understand this movie more than you might.
Exactly. It's not a caveat. It's it's the reason for. Yeah.
So that just doesn't really sit right with me, that idea, because I try and I sort of write amateur film reviews every now and then on my Facebook page, which we link on here sometimes. And whenever I do those, I try and be like as objective as possible. I don't like say like, oh, I loved The Hidden Life, Terrence Malick's A Hidden Life because my grandfather was German and grew up in Germany, like stuff like that. And it's just a weird way to do things, in my opinion. And then on the opposite side of that coin, I'm really, really not looking forward to next week, when we see all the people who are going to give negative reviews of the Northman, because it's the opposite of what they want. It's all these people saying like, oh, this is, I'm such and such a person, and I don't want these white stories. I don't want the, I don't identify with this, so I don't want this. And so it's like, I don't know. It's kind of, they're having their cake and they're eating it too. And
and then they're taking your cake away and telling you can't eat it. and that is a like do your best not to fortune tell, Matt, but I think you're going to be right about the kind of drivel that is going to be written about that movie.
Mm-hmm.
But because like look at it on its own merits, a piece of art, and try not to just kind of bolster it because you feel like it should be done. It's no different than like all the feminist think pieces about why Ghostbusters 2016 is actually the best Ghostbusters movie that was or will ever be made, just because it fulfilled the obligations that they wanted it to culturally. And it's too, and that's why that movie failed so badly, and why Afterlife was so warmly embraced in comparison to that one, because it circled back to what actually was universal about it, instead of trying to boil it all down to identity and why that kind of, like, forgive the term, but it's like it's a kind of a cultural Marxist way to approach consumption of things, whether it's an art film or if it's a franchise. It has to be siloed and it has to be microscoped, otherwise it's something that is dangerous or wrong, and it's the politicization of everything. Instead of art being upstream from politics, it's the opposite. And for a lot of people, like, and especially in like criticism over the last like 10 years or so, identity has taken the forefront at how things are approached. It's like objectivity is something for white supremacists. Something unironically said in the world we live in today. But that's where we are. But as far as this,
it's a good discussion, and I'm glad that we brought it up, because it's interesting how that's kind of the sentiment towards this movie is. It's either the best movie ever, or it doesn't even seem like there's a lot of people that hate it out there, but there's a lot of people that are like, it's either the best movie you've ever seen or it's good. It's fine.
It's interesting. It's probably going to have a long life. Yeah. Especially as soon as like the YouTube film kids discover it and they have all these things to analyze and talk about. Like, people are going to be poring over every frame of this movie just to find all of the detail and creativity that went into making it, because it's so fucking dense. Like, like those like color like things that people do where they take the color of every frame and they like shrink them down.
Oh yeah.
Like, I can't even like that. Like, watching this movie is like having one of those shoved into your head.
That is really good comparison. Yeah, it's relentless. It almost like never lets up, and just like the creativity. And I guess to pull back to the actual movie a little bit, I really, really commend the film for the action scenes, as far as like the choreography and stuff like that. Like, in this movie that you wouldn't expect, it's one of the most like fulfilling martial arts movies of the past like 10 years. Like,
a fanny pack as a weapon, fuck yeah. Like all that kind of stuff. And because this film was initially conceived as a Jackie Chan vehicle, and then they realized, well, we really can't get Jackie Chan. And then because her name's Michelle Yeoh, right?
Yeah, Michelle Yeoh.
Yeoh. And as soon as like they got her interested, they completely reworked the movie around, having the main character be a woman, because they found that resonated more.
Mm-hmm.
And we should really commend. I wish I had all the actors' names, but the formerly known as Short Round. What's his real name?
I think it's Ki Hei Kwan.
Ki Hei Kwan.
Yeah.
An amazing performance from that dude. Unbelievable. Like, it's all the different versions of him that he was doing, but it kind of like with Severance, you didn't know which the way that the mannerisms would change or the facial expression would change and delivery of lines would change from each version of the character that you were seeing. Like, he did a very subtle performance that I enjoyed, but then at the same time, he had all the Jackie Chan and, you know, martial arts sequences in this movie too. And yeah, there's the mile a minute, balls to the wall. It's unlike anything you've seen recently. It will remind you of a lot of different, whether it's a martial art movie or, you know, a Rick and Morty episode, you know, maybe the only thing that matches it just for its the imagination that goes into the all possible things and really meaning it and not just being passé about it. Like, to this movie's credit, there was no zombie universe.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. That would have been just like a thing that would totally happen. Like, yeah, I mean, I guess it's going to happen in Doctor Strange, but
exactly. And funnily enough, yeah, like that having that trailer in front of this movie kind of made me laugh because the Marvel notion of what a multiverse is utterly lame compared to what this movie does with it. And it is kind of, this is in the year of the multiverse, this is the movie that takes the cake. And you know, gets the medal. If the Oscars have a favorite multiverse moment Oscar, this movie should get it.
It definitely will, you know, takes that trophy. And I guess to kind of, is there anything else you wanted to touch on or anything?
I guess simply to say, yeah, like this movie is not for everybody. Like, I would not ask my parents to watch this. They wouldn't be able to handle it. Their brains would fall out of their skulls. But I feel like this movie has something for the audience that can handle it. And there's a lot more people out there that probably can handle it than not in this day and age. And I really hope that people give it a try. And I want to, like, people are, you know, shit on A24 for all the stuff that they do when it comes to, you know, promoting content or picking the kind of content, like the kind of thing that they pick, you know, as curators of, you know, art distribution. But I'm glad that this movie got made, because I can't imagine a world without it now. I want to see this again, and it's worth seeing, maybe not like dozens of times, but at least once.
Yeah, that's kind of what I would say. Well, I would actually, I think this is probably going to be a movie that I watched the one time and I'll probably never watch again.
Which is fine, you know?
Which is fine. Yeah, I don't mean that. I don't mean that necessarily as like a criticism. I just mean that in the sense that, like, I've seen it all, and, you know, it doesn't have any other surprises for me, and it's not. It's such a relentless experience. It's exhausting almost, but in, you know, almost in a good way to watch this. And I'll say it again, you know, go see it while it's still in theaters. If anybody who's watching this, if this is still at a theater playing near you, go see it before Friday, because it's going to be gone on Friday. It's
going to be gone. I was so surprised that AMC kept it in the theater this weekend, but it's because they didn't get anybody in the theaters from, you know, Monday to Friday until Friday happened. So they kept everything the same, and I was very grateful, because and this is something that I was going to bring up earlier, but I was almost resorting to piracy to see this movie, because I didn't think I was going to be able to. God, where did he go? I thought I put him in here. Oh, here he is. And so I found a dubious platform that has dubious streams, and it was a cam rip of it was the English audio, or like the Western audio rather, because this is a multilingual film. But about like 10 to 15 minutes into the movie, before everything starts getting fucking crazy, I get interrupted by this dude popping up on the screen to sell me on like crypto slot games. And if you are somebody who's a visitor of these websites, he's a very familiar face on the cam rips specifically. Because if it's like a DVD or like a rip from a streaming platform, you know, you're getting it as it is. but the people who take the risk and bootleg the movie for you, this is how they get their money. It's from this smiling man, conning people into clicking on links. So I just want to shout out the slots guy. He made me laugh, and then he made me go, oh yeah, I really should just pay the money and see this movie for real. Because it would have been such a disservice not to see it in a theater. And I guess that's where I will leave it. But moving on to next week. We kind of talked about it earlier, but the movie next week that we're going to be talking about is The Northman. It's finally out. Robert Eggers isn't really sure if he's ready for this movie to be out. He just sounds so conflicted. It makes me laugh, but I can't fucking wait for this movie.
Yeah, it's pretty funny, watching his reaction it's almost like you've gotten the Robert Eggers narrative through all of the press junkets and all of the interviews he's done in the past month leading up to this movie. You've gotten his entire frame of mind, and it's so funny to watch because in one interview he's talking about the studio meddling in the movie, and then the next interview he's like, it's not that bad. Sometimes studio interference is a good thing, and
exactly. Yeah, not every filmmaker should be God, any more than Meryl Streep should be, and there should be some room for them to hear some other perspective and then do something with it. And if New Regency's message to him was, "Yo, this is," where it's not even a verbal criticism, and it's just clear that something needs to change. But either way, I guess, because he looked at the Batman and was thoroughly impressed with how Matt Reeves made the Batman, and I read that in an interview, and that made me laugh, because if any movie fucking needed a fucking editor or some Harvey Weinstein character to be like, shake, get rid of it, maybe that movie did. But I hope the version of the Northman we get is the one that I don't want another cut. You know what I mean? I just want one movie. Yes. To ring out through time. I don't want anything else. Yeah.
God forbid that the phrase Eggers cut trends on Twitter in the next week or so.
No.
Just one, please.
That's all we need.
Yeah.
There's also, you're going to be going to The Enormous Weight of Massive Talent. Is that the title of it?
The Unbearable Weight.
Unbearable Weight. Yeah. But the more that the trailers have come out for this movie, the less interesting it has become for me, because in a way, this is just the interview starring Nick Cage as himself.
Yeah, it definitely looks a lot more like a studio film when I saw, when you see the trailers, as opposed to the thought that you had of this movie in your mind before any trailers came out.
Yeah.
I was definitely expecting something a lot more, I guess artistic, but this definitely seems, it seems like a straight comedy almost.
Pretty much. And maybe we're being bamboozled. It wouldn't be the first time that the true nature of the movie is hidden, in the promotions for it, but I think we're getting the movie as it is with this. It's what if, it's what's that fucking movie? Like Tropic Thunder, but with a real actor being self-reflexive about all of his movies.
Yeah.
Basically. I'm still excited for this movie, don't get me wrong, but it is, now that we know more about it, I have a different feeling going in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I'll be seeing that tonight, and I should have some thoughts posted about it on my Facebook page tomorrow, so we'll link that in the description. But
what is, I guess I shouldn't skip over that, but we got Better Call Saul, the final season premieres tonight, and
this week. I think it's I want to say it's on Monday.
Okay, this coming week. I haven't seen a single episode of this show.
Oh, really? Yeah,
should I watch it?
I think so. Yeah, I actually hadn't watched any of this show until about 3 months ago, and now my wife and I have been not binging, but this is the show that we watch when we have nothing else to watch, basically.
Gotcha.
So
it's your
we'll
stories.
Yeah, we'll throw on an episode or two, if we've got nothing else going on, and it's surprisingly good. I think in some ways I like it better than Breaking Bad because it's more of a comedy, I guess, and it's less dramatic and it takes itself less seriously than Breaking Bad did. And I'm really excited to see where it goes, though. It's a smaller show than Breaking Bad, so that's something that people should expect, because it's not, especially towards its latter seasons. Breaking Bad got pretty big, like the scope of it got bigger, but this has stayed a pretty small show for its entirety. So
right on. As long and now that it's over, we don't have to worry about it killing Bob Odenkirk, because it just seemed like he aged at least 15 years over the 6 years they've been making this.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, and had a heart attack too.
Yeah, goddamn. But they finished it. They got it out, and now we get to experience it. What is We're All Going to the World's Fair? Yeah,
so this is kind of one that I have my eye on, and it is it's a movie that did this festival circuit last year, and it got pretty stellar reviews, and now it's finally it's coming out on video on demand. I want to say on Friday, and the premise behind this one is this girl, this teenager, alone in her attic bedroom, becomes immersed in an online role-playing horror game and begins documenting changes that may or may not be happening to her.
Fuck yeah, dude. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's very much, it reminds you of like that, like Slender Man, and I think it's definitely taking some artistic license from the real life ramifications of that, when those two girls in Wisconsin killed that other girl. And it's sort of the juxtaposition between what happens when a teenager's brain gets a hold of a online horror, like creepypasta stuff,
and just when parasocial relationships go wrong, because it's with something that might be malevolent and yet not even real at the same time. Its influence is still manifested reality. I am down for that. That's exciting. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. And then, of course, to wrap up next week's releases, The Flight Attendant got a second season. Why did it get a second season? I watched like the first half of the first season during COVID, I believe it was.
Yeah, I watched it too, and I don't think the show is like especially amazing, but I think it was better than it had any right to be.
Yeah.
But yes, it's weird that it is getting it probably should have been a limited series. And it is kind of weird that it's getting a second season, because from what I understand, it's based on a book that the story was covered, I believe, in the first season. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, where do they go from here, sort of? And but I mean, I'll probably I know that my wife really liked this show, so I'll probably end up watching it. And I think there's worse ways that you can spend an hour. So
as long as they keep it like because they did have a fun tone. I just got more interested in other things.
Yeah,
but it's another thing in the HBO Max stable that makes having that subscription worth it. As long as I'm baking it, to watch someday.
Yeah.
So that's next week. We did have a parting question from you, and the Wayback Machine at Facebook brought an old post from April 4th, 2013, which, has come past us, as we do this show, but, it was obviously your reaction to Roger Ebert finally succumbing to, his ailments.
Yeah, so basically, this I was brought this from my looking back section or whatever it's called on Facebook, and I thought this would be a good premise for a parting question because people can read it here. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but basically, I want to know if this has come to fruition, if what I say here has come to fruition, meaning I want to know if there any A-list film critics left, and if there is, who are they? Who do you think has the sort of gumption to take on that mantle, and if not, why? I guess why isn't there any? Because I mean, I think a lot of times, this day and age, people don't really cite critics anymore. They cite the publication.
It's true. Yeah. It's something to think about, because I'm even like, there definitely were some names that would come to my mind, but I'm just not sure if that's true with me as I am today, versus because as I'm thinking back, a lot of the names I'm thinking of were people I was reading or like listening to back in 2013, 2014, 2015, but the landscape has changed even for me. So that's something I'm going to have to think about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we'll answer that next week, but otherwise, the Northman, we'll be watching the Northman for next week. And yeah, it's going to be good. It'll probably be one of our longer episodes, and because I'm sure we'll have a lot to say about it. And, but otherwise, yeah, it's been a good show.
Yeah, thanks for stopping by. Matt, as always, thanks for watching, anybody who tuned in. And have a good week, everybody.
Yeah, see ya.